Hi everyone, my name's Declan McGlynn. Welcome to Friday Forum Live, Point Blank's weekly broadcast, bringing you exclusive tutorials, artist interviews and industry insight every Friday live from East London. Today we're looking at mixing and balancing vocals with tips on EQ, compression and our old friend parallel processing, and plenty more too. So as I said, we're going to take a look at vocals today. The premise behind the session is all about balancing and sitting your dry vocal in your mix. And remember, we are live and interactive, so make sure you keep your questions coming throughout the broadcast and we'll get to them at the end. So I'm joined by JC Concado, who's the head of school here at Point Blank.
Hey,
how's it going?
Yeah, really good. And you?
Good. Excited about this, excited about Friday, weekend. Yeah,
absolutely.
So we're going to take a look at maybe a session we have here.
We've got a session which was from one of our courses where we, on purpose, recorded the vocal sessions.
Okay.
So that way, I thought it would be a good template to use just to illustrate some of the basic technique that I think you can really apply to whatever you do, whatever genre, across the genre. Again, trying to keep it open for everyone, really. So yeah, shall we have a quick listen?
Yeah, let's listen
before
to the track.
Starting?
So this is the track with the vocals balanced already?
It's the pretty much. I mean, more or less balanced. It's not a final mix. I think it's more stating what I call a monitor mix, rough mix, but something that you can listen to without cringing too much.
Yeah.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken
As you can see, there are quite a few tracks of vocals. So it's a good example
hit
to
the
use.
ground. You're the air I haven't found. Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm and all.
So you can see the vocal sits pretty well in the mix.
Is to turn it all
But I think what we could
around.
start doing is maybe
Close my
bypassing
eyes.
or everything, and now let's put it back into the context to see how the difference.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with
It's on top of it, yeah.
Completely on top of it.
trying to fly. I hit the ground.
And typically the key with vocal is, I mean, first of all, as we know, and we've talked about it many times, as soon as you put vocal in the track, that's the thing that people are going to
Pick up on,
and listen to, no matter what. I think it's an instinctive human thing to do.
Yeah.
You're going to be drawn to the vocal, so for that reason they have to work. Whatever is the style, if they're supposed to be quiet, really on top, but it has to work with the song in terms of putting across the emotion of the track. So
Absolutely.
that really is the key. Really, it has to make sense whichever way you're going to it. So shall we start looking at maybe the typical chain?
Yeah. So from how you start and how you order your effects.
Exactly, and starting to bring everything else. So at the moment they're dry.
'Cause I've been sitting here
So at
like
first you assess the vocal. Here they were really well recorded. We had I didn't do the recording, but it was a U87 going into. I think it was an Avalon pre-compressor,
nice, yeah.
so already quite compressed a little bit,
Okay.
good quality. And if you look, to be honest, let's put a channel EQ first, straight away, and let's put the analyzer on.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken
And you see already there's not too much going
trying to
on.
fly. I hit
been rolled
the
off already.
ground.
It's been rolled off,
You're
all of that
the
has been
air
done.
I
It was-
haven't found.
So there's not much to do in terms of corrective. But basically the first thing I would do is normally I would put a compressor on to control the dynamic. I would start with that and then usually have an EQ afterwards to make up for it and make it fit into the track, if you like, to shape the sound. But I would always have a corrective EQ first.
Right.
Typically, if there was a lot of things going on between, below 60 hertz, that may trigger the compressor and you don't really hear it. If there was a huge resonance, sometimes there could be a huge resonance around 200, 100, depending on how it's been recorded, the mic, the room. I would tend to correct that before hitting the compressor.
Yeah. So you can pull away those frequencies before the compressor brings them up.
Exactly, so you're getting something a little bit more balanced, hitting your compressor.
Okay.
So in that case, there were a few a little bit, very little at 60, below 60. So I just did more as a safety. I've put a filter, but really more for safety's sake. So I think let's jump into compression, really, because I think compression is the key to get your, compression and a combination of things, but compression is really the first tool that's going to help you to sit the vocal onto the mix. Vocal by nature, singers are going to move away, back and forth from the mics. There are natural peaks when you speak. When we speak, we're
Like
not.
plosives and
You know, it's all those aspects. So several aspects that we need to look at compression is you control the peaks. That's one thing with compression. That's to control those P, the Bs, and you know, getting that a little bit kind of microscopic control of dynamic. Another part is performance smoothing. You know, in terms of you may have started the beginning of the verse a bit quieter than the end of it, and that kind of stuff. So you're gonna try to do that as well with a compressor. The big part of it for me is transient shaping with a compressor, and that is really the key. And we can. I've done a couple of setups here, so we can illustrate those.
Okay.
So attack and release, huge impact on compression.
'Cause I've been sitting here
So,
like a bird
with the fast
with
attack,
broken wings,
usually you're gonna bring the vocal a little bit further, sitting in the mix, but a bit further. With a slow attack, you're gonna tend to bring the vocal up more up front. But you're also exaggerating a little bit like on snares. With a slow attack, you're leaving all the transients going through. So you're bringing that up front vocal a bit more urgency. That's quite of a mellow track, that one, so I thought it needed to sit a bit more rather than be jumping at you. So as you can see, I've put a really ridiculously fast attack, but that seems to be doing the trick. Now, in terms of the release, it's the same. A slower release is going to push the vocal further and keep it more in control. The sustain is for longer. A shorter release, medium, fast release, what's going to give you is bring a bit of a throat, make it sound bigger. Whereas a slow release make it sound a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit. So there's a bit of that. So let's compare those settings. So here I've got one with a fast attack and relatively slow release. If you listen to,
trying to fly, I hit the ground. You're the air.
See straight away, it's really sitting much more straight away, especially here.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken.
Straight away it's sitting already, you know, definitely. Let's compare, for example, now with another compressor that I've set up here. It's not unusual to have at least 2 compressors on your vocal. It's really not unusual at all, actually. It's probably common, sometimes more even, all doing a little bit of that, of all the stuff I've described before: performance smoothing, controlling peak, transient shaping. Here I've gone with another setting, a slower attack, and a shorter release, and have a listen.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken wings, trying to fly, I hit the ground.
See, it's bringing it a little bit forward now with a slow attack, so it gives it a little bit of attitude, if you like.
Don't want to be alone.
It's certainly not as consistent as the first compressor.
Yeah. But both together they kind of work. So you see here it's on its own, slow attack.
I close my eyes.
But it's not as consistent.
Every plosive and every initial transient pokes through a lot more on that one.
Exactly.
Which you might want.
And you could follow it up with a fast attack to keep that under control and getting. So that's the kind of techniques that you could go with. On this track, I felt, to be honest, that one compressor doing on that kind of settings worked quite well somehow. So let's go with that anyway. And now let's bring an EQ. I mean, typically EQ after is going to be about shaping, maybe bringing. Usually, I mean, especially vintage compressor, they are known for being non-linear. Therefore, meaning that the top end, the more you compress, the more the top end is going down a little bit. Suffers, or maybe it's a nice thing. Depending. But usually, typically, when you compress quite heavily, you're going to bring a bit more top end that you've lost through compression and vocal. That's the typical techniques, really. So as you can see here, that's kind of what we've done, bringing a little bit of 10K, bringing a bit of presence here at 4K. So usually 2.5, 4K is where your presence is as. 4K, be careful, because it brings a bit of S's as well, all this kind of stuff. And this one I felt was a little bit thin somehow, so I brought a bit of body here.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird.
So let's try the track now with what we've had here.
Trying to fly, I hit the ground.
I think we're already in a better place for the way. Let's mute. So that's without all the stuff. It's really not holding it. But obviously, being dry, it still feels a little bit on top of the vocal. That's something else we're going to approach. So those are kind of the main thing that's going to help you to see. That's the basic bread and butter working on your vocal channel.
That's like vocal admin section.
Yeah, totally, exactly. Also, something to be aware of is obviously the type of compression, whether you use VCA, FET, the kind of sound of compression. I mean, a classic compressor that is used a lot on vocal would be the LA2A, probably is the most famous one used. It's an opto, really warm, smooth, works really well on vocal. But you may put a VCA along that, slightly more transparent to bring. After that, the door opens, you open the door. And so now, once you've got all of that and you're happy with that fits, usually bringing the top end, there's going to be some sibilance going through. I think that's part of vocals. And the way people deal with sibilance, there are a lot of different engineers have different technique. I've seen engineers going into the audio file, reducing de-esses, literally on the audio, manually, with automation as well, bringing it down really fast, automation on each esses. That would be probably the most natural way to do it. You just make them quieter without using any dynamic tool. Otherwise, the classic example is a de-esser. Some people prefer using a de-esser. I've got to say it's a bit quicker than automating every esses, depending on the track. Again, not all de-essers are equal in quality and doing the job. My favorite one is probably the Sonox. I just love the way it sounds and really transparent. You can quite push it without having the side effect. And I'm going to demonstrate.
It's hard with a de-esser because the frequency you're trying to get rid of is actually the frequency that has the most clarity as well. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Challenge, exactly. So luckily on this track, I think the Hesses that are coming through a little bit are more towards the 10K. So you're still keeping that kind of presence around 2K, if you like. Logic's got a de-esser. I'm finding it a little bit overcomplicated to use. I mean, it's got a detector and a suppressor and a strength and sensitivity for each. That I think it's a bit too much for me. A de-esser should have, in my opinion anyway, it should have the frequency selector and then the threshold of how much you're attenuating that, But let's have a listen. I mean, just to make you aware of it. So.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird.
So let's go back at the beginning where we've got S's.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird.
And now typically, the danger of de-essing, if you do it too much, if you push it, you're going to start to make the singer sound like somebody who's lost their teeth. And let's have a listen.
You might want that too.
You may want that too. It's always a nice, people usually they enjoy it in the studio.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with...
That's
'Cause I've been sitting here.
And it sounds terrible, so you can't really have that. But that's the effect. Actually, it's a good way to really push it to see if you're getting that. That means you're probably in the right frequency.
Okay.
So it helps you to overdo it.
Similar to lowering the threshold way lower than you would in a compressor, just to check your attack and release times, and then bring it back.
Yeah, absolutely. There's really a strong case for doing all those sort of stuff, overdoing things, just to ensure that you're actually on the right track. Yeah, totally. So I've got to say, Logic is really not known to be for his de-esser, shall we say. Maybe 10 is a bit better. I haven't played with it, so it's hard for me to tell. If you want to check, you can listen here. Suppression and detector, so you can detect what the S's are, and often you have to do that. It's hard maybe sometimes, so it can help you. But all de-essers will have this feature. But I want to show you another way to do it, which is using a compressor in Logic. And I think it's a better way to do it somehow. It's a bit more transparent.
Okay.
To do that, you need to set it up a certain way.
Okay.
So here, I put up a compressor. I've got one compressor. Typically, you're going to use it in peak mode, because you want it to react really fast. Really fast attack, really fast release. I've put it on auto, but you could really go, all you want is only the S's to be picked up, basically. That's the idea. I'm going for a really high ratio here, and after that you're going to set up your threshold. What I'm doing here in terms of setting up, you open the lower pan in Logic, the lower section here, and what you need to do is you have to make it in modes. You have to select, basically, you're using the sidechain filter to isolate a certain frequency, and that the compressor starting to trigger only when that frequency occurs. The idea is you isolate the frequency of the S's, therefore the compressor only behaves when the S's are hitting the threshold. That's kind of the idea. The best mode I find is BP, band pass, therefore you're only isolating a certain frequency. It does nothing around, below and higher than this band pass. Here I've set it up to 11. In order to listen to the S's, the best way is put your activity onto listen, that onto mode, and let's have a listen now. See, I'm only hearing the S's. That's all we're hearing. If I'm changing here, I'm only listening to that band path.
So it's kind of like a dynamic EQ in a way.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
So yeah,
We're picking up the S's now.
9Ks,
And you can define with the Q. With the Q, look, the more I'm opening my Q, the wider is the
band gets.
So suddenly I'm hitting other things than the S's. And maybe you don't want to reduce those. So you can really make it more narrow if you want to. Okay, only picking up the S. And now you set up your threshold and I'm seeing all these S's being picked up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I want. Now I've got a de-esser. So now to go back to, obviously to listen, you put just activity on. That means this is now
Active, yeah.
active as the threshold.
Broken wings, trying to fly, I hit the ground. You're the air.
Let's go back where there was a lot of
Beats
S's.
through the storm and on.
Much flatter, yeah.
I want is to turn it all around.
And I find for me that it's got less of that
Yeah,
no
yeah.
teeth effect, if you like.
Yeah,
It's got
yeah.
a bit more transparency to it,
Yeah.
to the de-esser.
Sure.
So that works really well. So anybody using Logic,
'Cause I've been sitting
the compressor.
here like a bird with broken wings, trying to fly.
Then listen in the track.
I hit the ground. You're the air I haven't found. Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm and all I want is to turn it on.
quite nicely under control.
Yeah.
You still want them. Obviously, you want them there here, you know.
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
should really do that because otherwise, at the mastering, all of those, the more top end that are being brought up over all the mix are going to become really and probably, you know, become a problem.
Yeah.
Really. So that's for that. Now, next is trying to fit them in the mix. So again, in terms of effect, I mean, we could go on forever in terms of effect. Again, your bread. I'm going with bread and butter today.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your reverb, your delays. That's the kind of space you can get.
Yeah.
The slower the track and kind of the emotion, I think you can get away with having longer reverbs. You've got more space for that. The space in between for the words, in between the words. One of the classic reverb, it's would be a plate reverb on vocal, for example. And I've got one here, bus 5, so let me check my bus 5 here. Yes, so let's start with that.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with broken wings, trying to fly, I hit the ground.
So yes, we're
You're the air I haven't found.
A bit too much. So classic reverb, a plate, really works on vocals, typically. I think there's one mistake again with reverb that we may have discussed in previous sessions, but it's always kind of like, sometimes they make it a bit too short in time, but too much of it.
Right.
With vocal, the key to keep the vocal in front while having that kind of space is the pre-delay.
Right.
Let's have a look at what we have here on the Space Designer. We've got a 12 millisecond pre-delay.
'Cause I've been sitting here
I'm gonna
like a
increase it.
bird with broken wings,
You see the vocal is
trying to fly,
still there.
I hit
The
the
reverb
ground.
is more
You're
apparent
the
as well.
air
It's more apparent,
I haven't
but they're
found.
kind of dissociated a little bit more,
Don't
and it crowds really
want
well.
to be
Whereas no
alone.
pre-delay,
My heart beats through the storm and
you're losing a little bit of the
all
presence, in my
I
opinion, starting to
want
sound like
is
a
to turn it
in a
all
bathroom, in a hall,
around.
and that may work for
I
sound design, but in a pop
close
song, I think you need that.
my eyes to say goodbye to being lonely.
Straight away, it works so much
Yeah.
better.
Baby,
So
I've got to say-
the pre-delay is the time it takes between the reverb getting a signal and triggering the reverb.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. That means you've got those 10 milliseconds where it's only dry vocal.
Yeah. Which is what would happen naturally.
'Cause I've been sitting
Totally. If
here
I'm
like
sitting
a
here,
bird
and in the big room you're talking to me, I'm going to hear those, and then the reverb coming after.
I hit the ground.
So now let's say have a listen with the reverb now. See how it sounds already in the track.
'Cause I've been sitting here like
Now
a
it seems already much
bird with
better.
broken wings, trying to fly. I hit the ground. You're the air.
But it still feels a little bit on top. So another trick is always using also kind of delays, slightly long delay to help to blend. After that, how much do you want to hear the repetition is going to depend on the style of the track, blah, blah. I think this one, there's enough space in between that we can feel the repetition of the delay. Okay. And I think it will help to blend it again. So let's have a listen. I'm going to bring that. I've got this delay here. You can have a listen to it here. In Logic, I'm a big fan of the tape delay, as you can see here. I've got a tape delay. I've got a delay of about 600, so it's quite a long delay.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird with
And you see again,
wings, trying to fly.
You noticed I've done a really low,
You're the
a big filtering on the delay itself.
Found.
Yeah.
The key to keep it separate from the track
Want
is not
to
having
be
those full
alone.
frequency. I'm
My
a big fan of
heart
getting rid of all the high
beats
frequency,
through
the
the
low,
storm
and have the delay quite middling,
I want
quite warm.
is to turn
In the
it
track,
all
you probably won't hear it
around.
that much.
I
You can get away with
close
it.
my
Have a listen.
eyes to say goodbye to being lonely.
Let's put it together.
'Cause I've been sitting here like a bird
really
with
hear the
broken
repetitions?
wings,
But it
trying to
helps.
fly.
Now it feels like it's
I
really
hit
sitting in the
ground.
mix, the whole track.
You're the air I haven't found.
So that's your basic, that's my basic setup here on the vocal.
Cool.
After that, in terms of BVs, we notice here on this track there's a lot of double tracking that comes to support when we hit the pre-chorus. So a typical thing that I'm going to do on it is the pitch shifting effect. So maybe we can discuss that a little bit, the kind of typical pitch shifting effect. Classic hardware that used to do those things would be H3000, AMS. The pitch shifting is this ability to shift, maybe by only a few cents on each side. And the typical trick is doing minus something and plus on the other side, so you're getting that kind of chorusy effect.
Yeah.
Let's have a listen to it here. What I've done it as is in Logic, and I'm setting it up as, I've got two mono one, as you can see here. And one is plus 10 and one is minus 10. So I've got them both here, coming up here on two different buses, axes, completely hard pan, left and right. So minus on one side, plus on the other side. H3000 had some wicked presets designed for that, and some of you may be aware now that basically the guys who used to code and program for Eventide H3000, some of them are now working at Sound Toys.
Okay,
So, which
that
is
makes
what,
sense.
That
yeah.
makes sense. So the Sound Toys, the new pitch shift effect is really, really nice, and it emulates those kind of classic hardware.
Sure.
AMS delay, H3000, the Yamaha SPX90 had a pitch shift C, cheaper version of it, but that kind of worked as well. So let's have a listen what it does. I've got it on the double tracking here, on those kind of harmonies, so maybe I'm going to bring it here for you guys.
Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm, and all I want
You see the pitch shifting?
is to turn it all
Makes
around.
it sound bigger, smoother.
I close
Works really well on
my
our indie track, that kind of
eyes
BVs.
to say
Let's switch them up.
goodbye to being lonely.
I mean, they still work because they're double
Baby,
tracks, so you
I'm
already have that
A
kind of
natural chorus.
a natural chorus. But I wanted to kind of bring it
Close my eyes and read.
now to also illustrate. What I could do is do it on the. I'm gonna do it for you guys on the. So it's 7 and 8. I'm gonna do it on the lead vocal to really hear what pitch shifting does, so you get a good idea. Put there.
Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm, and all I want
Yeah, I mean,
is
that's
to
very
turn
dramatic,
it all
but yeah.
around.
I've obviously gone slightly
I
overboard here.
close my eyes to say goodbye
You see?
to being
Sweet in the middle.
lonely. Baby, I'm yours.
So again, it's a way to artificially spread it in terms of stereo width, taking double tracking, a bit of chorus always had to blend the vocal in the track.
Yeah.
So it does all of that basically. So let's bring back here with the stuff, and now the vocals straight away are working better. So you can see the lead vocal always in the front. I want to keep that kind of natural thing, but the BVs
is to turn it on
supporting nicely a little bit. And typically on the chorus, widening up more. Somewhere.
Close my eyes
and here I've really gone a little bit more on the pitch shifting because I really wanted to, as it supports only certain note, I really wanted to get that kind of opening which I felt for this track was working.
Yeah.
You know, and that's pretty much that.
Yeah.
I mean, after that, there's lots more we can discuss. I think one more thing we should discuss is maybe parallel compression.
Let's discuss it.
Because that's the big thing at the moment.
Yeah.
With parallel compression, basically the idea is that you really can hammer a compressed signal and bring the signal, the dry signal with it, giving you can really bring the lower, the low level. It really helps in a natural way. With and you don't hear the compression so much because retaining the transient better. It can fatten up the sound as well. So I've set up one quickly earlier on so that we can listen to it. And I'm going to turn down the compressor that I have on the channel and bring the. So I'm going to bring it down. I've set up an aux in pre-fader.
Don't want to be alone.
Yeah.
My heart beats
and,
really
through
yeah,
the
I've hammered.
storm
That's what I call heavy
and
compression.
all
But I'm
I
a big
want
fan
is
of
to
that
turn
anyway.
it all around.
You still got enough attack to get that snap through. Yeah.
Exactly, and if anything, I wanted to bring that.
Say goodbye to being lonely.
One thing I love about the new compressor in Logic 10 as well is you could have a bit of output distortion.
Don't want to be alone. My heart beats through the storm.
So now that's only the heavily compressed, the parallel, if you like.
Yeah.
And now let's bring a little bit of the dry signal into it. Let's see what.
Don't want to be alone. My heart
And then I could
beats
start bringing
through the storm and all
without.
I want
Let's start bringing it in.
is to turn it all around.
Pretty nice.
Yeah.
I close my
Just makes that thick,
eyes
consistent
to say
version of the vocal
goodbye
alongside the more
to
natural
being
one.
lonely.
Totally. The only thing is here, it's so heavily compressed, I probably would have to de-ess it as well. You hear
Yeah.
it pss, pss,
Yeah,
and
sure.
a little bit nasty on the compression.
It's bringing
But-
up a lot of the air and space as well that you might want to
Yeah,
deal with
totally.
too.
Yeah, it brings the breath as well.
Yeah.
But all that brings a bit of
Don't
attitude, I
want
think.
to be
So let's have a listen
alone.
in the track.
My
How
heart
that work.
beats through the storm and all I want is to turn it all around. I close my eyes.
Quite nice as well.
Yeah,
really,
sure.
Really, really, really nice. I mean, I know you've spoken to, for example, Andrew Shops at the IMS.
Yeah, we just went to IMS Ibiza. Shout out to IMS last week.
And I saw some of the extract you guys some of the stuff you discussed, parallel compression.
Andrew Sheps is an amazing engineer if you don't know him.
Absolutely.
Mentioned that he uses up to 15 compressors in parallel in his mix. It's definitely something that everyone is using right now.
Yes, I mean it's a big thing. I mean I think a US mix engineer from the US are using. I can't remember another engineer is using lots of different ones and sends just a little bit in each to kind of shape the sound. When you start knowing the sound of your compressors, you really can get that thing going.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is great,
So we've got quite a few questions to get through. So do keep them coming, and we'll try and make sure we get them all in. The first one comes from Zenith, who says, should we use any low cut or high cut EQ on the vocals? I find that squashes the vocals sometimes. I think he means just like a dramatic pass, rather than like notch EQing.
No, I wouldn't, unless there's a really need for it, unless you're doing it as a creative effect.
Yeah.
But then there's other ways to do that.
I mean, we did it, but only up to 60 to take away
exactly.
the
It was
subs.
more like a corrective, exactly. No, unless, I do it occasionally if I want that kind of radio nasally sound as an effect.
As more of an effect.
More as an effect, If you want presence, you can use that trick to do that, and again, parallel.
Yeah.
Go back into parallel EQing as well. Those
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Cool. So, sorry about pronunciation every week. Kasaba has asked, comparatively speaking, there isn't as much going on in this example as there would be in trance, for example. What tricks would you employ to bring out vocals when the spectrum is more crowded? Which is a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the bigger the track, the more effects sometimes you need on the vocal. Especially in trance, I think in trance you've got already so much delay going on.
Very mid-range presence.
Very mid-range
as well
presence.
In trance, yeah.
It's going to be about making sure that some of the synths are leaving that kind of space for the vocal to cut through. I think parallel compression works a treat, where you can really hammer that and have that in the trying to fix it. I think you'll have in a trance you'll have to get rid of quite a lot of low in the vocal that could clash with everything and that's going on. And you would really have to have those reverb and effects going on to blend typically long delays and stuff like that. I mean, there's something we haven't touched on, but maybe we've got time very, very briefly, is the fact that as soon as you put the vocal in a track, that's what you listen to, but if the vocal stays the same throughout 5 minutes, it gets a bit boring. So one thing you have to understand is that when you mix a track, you probably spend as much track on the vocal alone than on the rest of the track. And I'm not even going into automation, vocal ride. Vocal ride is an essential part. And changing effect sound. You know, if you listen to some songs, let's say like the last Lana Del Rey, for example, track, West Coast, the sound in the vocal, in the verse is quite distorted, in your face, and then the chorus goes back into that kind of hairy stuff. And it's really common technique to change the sound. Here on this track, there's a middle eight that completely changes. You probably, like a phaser, something like that would work really well. I mean, try to think of getting, so it keep the interest.
Yeah, and tells the story of the track.
And tell the story of the track, go with the lyrics, there's something that would work with that. Automate your effect. Don't expect to have it all static. It's boring. It's you need to on a trance track, the more part becomes, you could push up the reverb a bit more. Don't push the send, push the send rather than the return.
I think the point about pre-delay is even more important on trance than a busy track.
Totally.
To let the vocal sit at first and then give it its space.
Absolutely.
Otherwise it's completely lost.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So Chavez has asked, does he being JC, does JC match the timing of the pre-delay to the BPM of the track?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yes. Yes, I used to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes not.
And we won't get into the calculations, but it's a case of just checking the BPM, multiplying it by 6,000.
There are a lot of free apps on the internet.
Or that, yeah.
Where you enter your BPM and it gives you the 8th, the 16th. The 16 triplet, dotted.
Yeah.
I still use that. I mean, I used old school guys like me used to have a spreadsheet, like a sheet that you get from studios. Like, they had those sheets, so you have your timing and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely, yeah.
I know that another tip for this pre-delay works great on vocals, but it also is really important for drums. So if you are setting up your drum reverbs, it's nice if you got a short reverb, mid and long, to do a 16 or 32, 16th and 8th pre-delay reverb to the BPM of the actual track.
That can work really well.
Yeah, it keeps the drums coming through. And,
there's a bounce to it. There's But with delays, it's the opposite. I don't necessarily always click on the sync, because I like to keep my delays a little bit maybe slower or quicker, but by few milliseconds, it gives a bit of movement, a bit of life to the track. If everything is MIDI sync, quantize, it suddenly feels a little bit cubic for me.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
Yeah.
So one last question from Chavez as well. He says, do you treat the background vocals with the same reverb as the lead vocals?
If I can, yes. If it makes sense, yes. If probably they will share a bit of the same, yes. They will. It's not unusual. Sometimes I have got the BVs. It really depends if you want back. Reverb. Remember, reverb push the sound backwards again. It's always it's the same with compression and stuff. It's about bringing the sound up front or back, so you can control that kind of 3D image. Often, yes, I would say yes. Yeah,
okay.
They would share.
So you wouldn't create a separate reverb just for one part?
But it's not unusual that I think I've seen a lot of engineers do that, have 2 or 3 different reverbs, and just a little bit of it, like a shorter one to help bringing in, and then a longer one, and just a bit of each. and suddenly the vocal is being shading. Again, depends on the nature of the track, but
Yeah, cool, nice one. So we are out of time. That was great. I've got to go back and work on some vocals this weekend, so I'm taking those tips with me. Hope you got something out of that, and we'll be back next Friday for another Friday Forum. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, add us to your circles on Google+, LinkedIn, I mean, you name it, we're there. So we'll see you next Friday. Cheers.